Today we're going to be talking about celebrating LGBTQIA pride with cultural intelligence. And many of you probably have heard the term cultural intelligence. You probably have done some research yourself on that topic. So what I thought I would do is just go over some of the baseline information about it and then jump into a breakout session around the stages of developing cultural intelligence and how you see those stages encouraged at Montgomery College with your work, and possibly obstacles to developing cultural intelligence. So again, my name is Timothy Kane. I use the pronouns he, him, and his. And around LGBTQIA cultural intelligence, even something like the change from this pronoun, it's a name label where it says preferred pronouns. Now we're using these labels, and again, or these name stickers. And again, it's not trying to put a burden on folks saying, oh, everything is always changing. There's always a new letter added to the LGBTQIA acronym. But it's just saying, here, preferred pronouns, the trans students that I work with, the non-binary students say, they're not my preferred pronouns, they're just my pronouns. So we've made a switch already even to something like this. Montgomery College has done amazing things around LGBTQIA plus inclusion. And so you can be very, very proud about that. And again, as things evolve, the idea of trying to keep up with sort of where our students are at, where our colleagues are at, where we are at around LGBTQIA cultural intelligence. So now there's a new flag out there. And again, you might say, oh boy, here we go again. And yet the inspiration for adding additional colors, especially the black and the brown, reflects some tough conversations and some tough introspection within the LGBTQIA communities, saying that there has been racism, there has been a history of racism in our community where we've had erasure of the contributions of people of color within the LGBTQIA communities and our movements for liberation. So the black and the brown additional stripes were a reflection of that. So I think of you as empowered. That's kind of a cute or cutesy kind of image here. But there's some other folks. This is an amazing sort of trailblazer around gender identity. Their name was Pauli Murray. I don't know if people are familiar with Pauli. She was the first African-American Episcopal minister. And many folks, when they look at their history, they think that Pauli probably would identify as trans or non-binary today. And so I'm using the pronouns they, them, and theirs. You probably recognize Harvey Milk. I love this quotation of his. He worked so hard as the first openly gay elected official in the United States. I say openly gay because there are many other LGBT officials, but they weren't open about it. And he ran as a city councilor in San Francisco. And so he's remembered for his idea about hope, even though as a gay person, he was murdered with the mayor of San Francisco years back. So we have many LGBTQIA role models, lots of folks to look up to, which is pretty remarkable. When I've done work with the State Department, and I've worked with other countries, it's actually very difficult often to find out and open role models within the LGBTQIA community. But I think we are in very good shape, and Montgomery College also is in amazing shape to have amazing role models out there to help lead the community. So congratulations to you all. For my part, again, I don't represent all of or even most of the LGBTQIA community. As a gay man, as a gay white man, I represent my own experience, and I can reflect upon the experiences of my colleagues, my friends, my family members who are also part of the LGBTQIA community. So I want to make it really clear that, again, with humility, I don't represent all perspectives here, but I'll do my best to share some. So how we're going to spend our time today, we're going to look at, well, we just did sort of introductions and overview. We'll look at what is cultural intelligence, or CQ. The breakout session will be looking at cultural intelligence at Montgomery College and how the environment there supports the development of cultural intelligence. We'll come back and sort of reflect upon what people chatted about in their small groups. Then we'll look at some LGBTQIA terms, pronouns, and bathroom topics to sort of shore up part of your own cultural intelligence around LGBTQIA folks and language, the use of language. We'll do another breakout session. You'll be looking at LGBTQIA life and sort of the infusion of support with and for students, faculty, and staff who identify as LGBTQIA at Montgomery College. Come back again, and a final word. I'm so sorry that's like a huge, that's a huge agenda, but we'll make it. We'll make it through. If you have certain priorities that you want to make sure we look at, please put them in the chat. And I think Jackie and some other folks will be giving me that information. All right, let's dive right in. Does anyone recognize this gay Olympic athlete? Anyone? Regular Gaines, all right. Can you describe, do you know much about him?
I know that when he was competing, it was not known he was gay, that he did not come out until long after his competing days were over.
Right, exactly. Then there was another twist to his story because he, in his later years, still when he won gold medals in diving, he also was HIV positive. And he, I don't know if you remember, he hit his head.
Yes.
He did this one dive and it was kind of like this weird fluke because he was such a perfect diver, but he hit his head, a little bit of blood went in the water, and people were consulting, trying to figure out what to do. So he's navigated a lot of different pieces of sort of one part of the LGBTQIA experience, the coming out process, being a public figure, having HIV, many different things. Finally, he was put on the Wheaties cereal box, which was kind of a big deal, like way after he finished his career. All right, so our starting point around cultural intelligence, have people heard about that term? Have people, my guess is you've researched it yourself, you know a bit about it. Does anyone want to share anything really quickly about your understanding of cultural intelligence, like what that means? Anybody? And if not, I can jump in. All right, well, I'll jump in. One definition of cultural intelligence reads as this, and it seems like we know people or we've seen people that seem to be able to navigate different situations with different cultural settings, people who travel a lot possibly, people who put themselves in positions where they need to adapt and adopt new behaviors and do it in a seamless way that helps them fit into the culture or subculture that they're in. I know folks who are like this, and it's kind of remarkable that they are able to sort of, wherever they land, when they're traveling or in their daily life, whoever they're working with or engaging, they seem to have this ability to sort of sense the appropriate gesturing, body language, and verbal language that works in that situation. So who would we say is culturally intelligent? Some of the characteristics include, being curious. This one's a little tricky because I feel like I'm super curious as a person, and sometimes I feel like I might be intrusive about wanting to know about other people's backgrounds. So curious, but wanting to know about other people in a positive way that's not meant to be rude or intrusive. Someone who's really perceptive, using all of their senses, their visual cues, auditory cues, spatial cues. They understand the similarities and differences among people, and they can recognize those similarities and differences with behaviors. You know, it's tricky because all of us seem to automatically go to that unconscious bias, which is grounded in these stereotypes of different groups of people. So when we see someone, we might just sort of jump into a stereotype and say, oh, this behavior fits this stereotype. Someone who's culturally intelligent suspends that. They don't jump into the stereotyping piece of our engagement. And, you know, it's such a basic thing. It's sort of like what we're trying to teach everyone, young people, but ourselves as well. Culturally intelligent people think before they act. And it's almost like when we talk about unconscious bias, we say our unconscious bias thought is our first thought. Our second thought is our reasoned thought, our values-based thought. So someone who's culturally intelligent thinks and grabs that second thought before they act, before they respond. And then they suspend judgment about what they're seeing unfolding. They don't, you know, do the, ooh, I can't believe that just happened kind of reaction. They suspend judgment. They also effectively plan to engage cultural differences. And I feel like this one's a really interesting piece of cultural intelligence, where we need to be ready as best we can for the unexpected that does evolve and emerge in cultural differences in our exchanges. So how do we plan for, how do we prepare for engaging cultural differences? I remember my mom, you know, she wanted to go visit Montreal, and so she studied French. So that was like her effective planning to engage cultural difference. Unfortunately, when she spoke, people responded in French and she didn't really understand what they were saying, but she tried, you know, and so she tried to plan. It wasn't that effective, but she tried. And then someone who's culturally intelligent can adapt behavior, can change, almost like just sort of smoothly interacting with folks, can change, can adjust, and can be successful in that way. Does this make sense? Does this sound like people you know? Does it sound like maybe what you do when you work with different types of students? So I'm seeing some nods. Does anyone want to comment about this real quick? Oh, I see a little thumbs up. So like
I have a shortcut. I when I was younger, I just had relationships with different cultural people. You know, like just go. I went like by country. so like you have a 4-year relationship with a woman from France, and you learn a lot about yourself. You have another 3, 4-year, 5-year relationship with somebody from Ukraine, you learn even more. Now I'm delving into China. You know, I'm in a relationship with a Chinese woman, and what's really telling for me is that this current person is I had to listen to her talk on the phone a lot in Cantonese. And one thing that threw me, for example, was that she was using the N-word a lot in the conversation in Cantonese to her parents. And she got off the phone and I go, "Are you out of your mind? What are you throwing that word around for?" And she had no idea what I was talking about, because in Cantonese, that word means, I think it means that. It's equivalent to the word that in English. And it just, I was telling her, you really don't want to be talking on the phone in public because it just says the wrong message. But I learned that even now, I mean, I've been around quite a bit, and even now, just to realize that at this time in my life was really mind-blowing, that there are still things out there that are going to surprise me and to make me check myself about what I'm hearing and how I'm reacting to what I'm hearing. And that's all I wanted to contribute.
No, thank you for sharing that. Kimberly, you did a thumbs up. Was there anything you wanted to share? Maybe?
Yes, so I had 2 quick examples similar to Maurice. My husband is from Central America. I'm born and raised here in the United States. So yes, lots of reflection time to kind of question my own biases and thoughts. And anyhow, that's a whole separate conversation. But yes, that has helped me be culturally intelligent and really check myself when we're having discussions or raising our kids. And you have to really think about where is this person coming from that would lead them to that conclusion or perspective. But the other one that I wanted to share is, English is my first language. I learned Spanish in high school, And as I shared, my partner is from Central America, so we speak Spanish. And so I've picked up a lot of the nuances of the language. So when I speak Spanish and then that conversation happens of where am I from, they always think I'm from El Salvador, and they're always like, I couldn't tell, but you said this word, or you, how did you know this? You know, so being able to read people's language and silences, and I've really been able to pick that up. So I do resonate with this, and just in my own personal life, and having a multicultural family.
Kimberly, can I put you on the spot with Spanish for just a second? So there was an attempt to sell the car, the Nova, in Central America.
Mm-hmm.
And so when the folks down there saw that car being advertised, for some reason they were like, no way am I going to buy that car. That's crazy. There's no way. Do you get the? Can you explain it for us?
Right. So in Spanish, well, Richard has responded to everybody. So no va, no meaning no, va means to go. So it would mean you're trying to sell a car that says it doesn't go, it doesn't work, it doesn't move. So yes, from a marketing perspective, they were not culturally intelligent to know that the name of that car might not be appealing to, you know, help sell the car.
Exactly. So thank you for sharing that. And then Richard, thank you for explaining that in the chat. So these are all the elements that research suggests helps a person, helps any of us be culturally intelligent. And what I heard from folks is that, you know, we might have experience with this culture, this subculture, that subculture, but certainly we can't have experience, I would say, with all of the cultures represented by our students and our colleagues. So that's why, you know, for me, the wonderful thing about being culturally intelligent is that it's kind of a community effort, that you need people who have different experiences, that have lived different places, that have different kinds of life experiences together to be effectively culturally intelligent as a community, as Montgomery College, to effectively work with folks. The research suggests also that for some of us who are super well liked in our home culture, that can navigate and are really, really sort of great representatives of what we think or what we would say is our sort of our specific home culture. Sometimes, or ironically often, folks who are successful in their home culture are not successful being culturally intelligent with other cultures. And I don't know if it's like a pride thing. I don't know if it's like we just have, you know, USA, the way we think of it on our brain, that we can't sort of get out of that mode. But ironically, they say that sometimes maybe people who are a little less integrated into a specific home culture have the abilities to do these things here to navigate cultural intelligence more effectively. All right, well, the good thing also is that cultural intelligence, we can learn it. And so now what we're gonna do is we're gonna go over the steps for learning how to be culturally intelligent. So how does it work? Well, they say the first thing, and again, this isn't rocket science, but this is sort of the 4 stages of developing cultural intelligence. You know, they say that there needs to be like this initial sort of motivation, this initial interest in understanding and engaging and being around other folks who are different from ourselves. So you need to have a drive to learn about other people, do it in a respectful way, and then be persistent. It's almost like, for me, studying Spanish, you know, you got to plug away and plug away and plug away. You know, my Spanish teacher taught me a phrase that I use often when I teach English to second language folks. Poco a poco le entra agua a coco. You know, slowly, slowly, the water enters the coconut, and slowly I pick up the language, or I pick up the cultural cues that maybe seem so foreign at first. So drive is the first piece. The second one is knowledge. And this is a little bit of what we'll be looking at in the second half of our time together about LGBTQIA subcultures. Trying to understand the differences and the similarities around LGBTQIA culture and heterosexual cisgender cultures. One really interesting example about this, when there was some anti-bullying legislation being proposed, I remember one of the arguments was to say, you know, we can all agree that all children deserve to be safe in school. No matter what you think about LGBTQIA children, whatever, all children need to be safe. So we have some similarities and we have some differences. So knowledge is a big piece of this. Coming up with a strategy. How will you engage multicultural folks? How do you enter? How do you request an invitation for an engagement? How does that work? There's different ways of doing that. And lastly, what actions will you take that are culturally intelligent? What passive programming, what imagery do you have on your office walls at Montgomery College that shows that you're culturally intelligent, that recognizes, for the example of LGBTQIA folks, same-sex couples? What do you do? What are your actions, your words, your environment that you create, your actions? What do you do to demonstrate your cultural intelligence? So again, it's not rocket science, but these are the 4 developmental stages that they say help us enhance our cultural intelligence. So would anyone feel comfortable sharing some highlights of what came from your discussion about these 4 stages of developing your cultural intelligence at Montgomery College?
This is Patrick from Procurement Office.
Hi, Patrick.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
So within our group, we realized that this is taking place organically because of the different races of folks that we have within our unit already. So you already have the respect there, you have the understanding there. You're listening, you're taking in different aspects of different cultures. So it's there organically, but I'm sure there's more we can do to improve upon that.
Do you have incentives to engage other folks? Are there, you know, hopefully it doesn't happen, but if something happens that discourages that engagement, are there sort of repercussions for that around bias incidents, or like like around the drive piece, that first piece? Do you have incentives, and then do you have repercussions if things get in the way of developing cultural intelligence?
Well, within the procurement office, there's no repercussions associated with not moving in that direction. But again, because of the makeup of our unit, we're doing it automatically.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Would anyone else like to share? There's some very rich conversation in my small group.
So in our small group, we had, I think, some really great conversation about finding ways to make yourself more, maybe, I don't know if vulnerable is the right word, but, you know, making yourself more open to students teaching you as well, and making it clear that you're not, you know, it's not a one-way road. You're there to help students learn, but you also need to be open to your students teaching you, and just using that to set a good example for them in terms of being a lifelong learner. Yeah, that was one of the pieces, just in terms of how to work with students when there are things that you simply don't understand yet. Well, it's just an opportunity to learn.
And I love your reference to the idea of humility. Boy, you know, what a humbling experience it is to learn a new language, to go to a place where you're unfamiliar with the customs, and to acknowledge that students can teach us things as well. So thank you for sharing that. Anything else?
Tim, I'll share quickly. I know we're maybe a little behind, but we had a robust discussion in my group about some of the things that we have at the college that actually allow us to become more culturally intelligent. Whether or not everyone takes advantage of the opportunities is something else, but we talked about the different trainings that we have, safe zone training that we have. We talked about diversity as a goal for performance evaluations. That the different types of things that can satisfy that, runs the gamut, and it could be more focused and more prescriptive. But we do have that as an opportunity for people to encourage people to learn more about different cultures, etc. We talked about the diversity and the composition of our classrooms in and of itself, and that leads us with all of the different types of students that we have in the classroom, representing so many different countries and ethnic groups, that could lend itself to providing us with more awareness and understanding about different cultures. We have the Tapestry Institute through Elite, and some of the culturally responsive teaching programs that Elite offers as well to help faculty. Someone mentioned the Paul Peck Humanities Institute and the work that that faculty do with Smithsonian and the National Museums. So there are a number of things that we said were opportunities for people to learn and grow in this space. But then there are also some challenges, and two of the things that I'll mention is opportunities for students to educate us more about their cultures and their backgrounds. Student groups through Student Life have opportunities sometimes to talk with each other, but we don't always open that up to faculty and staff. So trying to find more ways to learn from our students. And then one other thing that I'll mention is disability as a culture. And needing more opportunities for people to become more aware about individuals with disabilities and the different types of disabilities and the cultures that surrounds that.
Great. Wow. Well, Deborah, thank you so much. That was awesome. It was an incredible discussion there. So it sounds like you have a lot going on at Montgomery College, sort of organically, but also with intention. The leadership of Montgomery College with Dr. Pollard and other folks with you all. You're with intention trying to motivate and increase the drive, and then you're providing the knowledge pieces through workshops and other learning. You're being strategic. You're not just sort of letting it happen willy-nilly, although that there's a time and a space for that, but you're being intentional about it, and then you're actually doing it. So kudos to you all. I think that you're well on your way, and it sounds like you're doing amazing things, and basically the students are the ones who really, really, really benefit, as do we. So we're gonna switch gears now and switch gears into the LGBTQIA cultures to sort of gain a little bit of cultural intelligence there. So we're trying to celebrate LGBTQIA Pride Month, which is June, even though we have National Coming Out Day in October. But June is really our month to celebrate LGBTQIA Pride. And you might be like, oh no, now we're adding CQ to the acronym, but we'll make it okay. So I don't know if people recognize some of these pictures. It's interesting. The Wizard of Oz, and I don't know if people are aware of it, is kind of it's sort of an iconic movie within the gay communities. Do people know anything about that in terms of it being kind of a gay, I don't know, sort of a gay referenced movie? Anyone? There's lots of different pieces of it, which is really kind of interesting. Judy Garland was absolutely considered sort of like this, kind of like this gay icon in terms of, she wasn't lesbian herself, but in terms of supporting the community. There's lots of pieces of her life in terms of people in her life who were gay, her father. People talk about her husband and Liza Minnelli's husband. And so there's a lot of connections around Judy Garland with the gay communities. And it's interesting, I don't know if people remember, but when Glinda here is talking with Dorothy, she says, it's always best to start at the beginning. And so we're going to start at the beginning with LGBTQIA intelligence in terms of looking at language in our alphabet soup, looking at pronouns, and then looking at gender inclusive bathrooms. So these are very sort of elemental pieces of the LGBTQIA plus experience for students, staff, and faculty on a college campus, on your campus. And so we're gonna look at these three elements first to enhance the knowledge piece of the development of cultural intelligence around LGBTQIA students, staff, and faculty. So let's start at the beginning. So there's a lot of terminology, and it seems like the terminology in a wonderful way, but also maybe in a confusing way, seems to expand almost daily around gender and sexual identities. These are some of the main terms that you probably hear: the L, the G, the B, the T, the Q, the I, the A, and then I'll talk about cisgender. So lesbian, a woman who's attracted to a woman who's identified as a woman who's attracted to other women. Gay, you know, it's interesting. It used to be a catch-all for the entire sort of non-heterosexual community. Now we're being more specific around it's more for men who are attracted to men. Bisexual, you know, now we're often using pansexual instead of bisexual. Many of our students are saying, you know, the binary of the bi in that term is something I don't really, I'm not into. So pansexual often is used instead of bisexual, but the B is still part of our acronym. Transgender, does anyone want to jump in and give your short description or definition of that term?
I can if you like, or if there's anybody else who'd like to.
No, sure, go ahead.
So generally speaking, transgender refers to anyone whose gender does not align with what was assigned at birth. So that could be someone maybe who was born, pulled out of their mama and the doctor said, okay, this is a boy. And then later on in life was like, actually no. You know, but it's just kind of recognizing of the many, it's not a binary either. So it's not going to be just someone who was assigned male at birth, later identifying as female or vice versa. It could also be someone who was given one of the two gender binaries at birth, and then later on said, neither of those fit me, or both fit me at different times in different ways. So it's just saying that they're not fitting into that standard cisgender model of this is what I was when, or this is what they said I was when I was born.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. And again, transgender at times as a term can be confused and confusing when it's around gender or biological sex. So often we conflate those two identities, biological sex being our physical bodies, our hormones, our chromosomes, our genitalia, and gender being how we understand ourselves. So when doctors deliver babies and they see certain genitalia, they assign a gender to that genitalia, and sometimes that gender is not accurate as someone grows up and they learn who they are. Queer questioning, you know, for me as a gay guy growing up gay in the 60s, 70s, 80s, you know, queer was a slur. It's been reclaimed by the LGBTQIA community. I put questioning next to the Q. Usually it's referred to as queer, that the Q there. Questioning is kind of, you know, sort of an outdated a little bit, but people mention it sometimes. Intersex is a reference to a mingling of male and female biology, sexual biology. So someone might be more on the male side of sexual biology, more on the female side, but they also have a mingling of sexual traits and hormones and chromosomes and things. Asexual, someone who does not experience sexual attraction to anyone. Cisgender is considered sort of the opposite of transgender in a sense, where it's the gender I was assigned at birth because of my sexual biology is the gender I understand myself to be now. So when I was delivered, the doctor looked at my genitalia and said, oh, this is a boy. And I grew up to understand myself to be a boy. So I'm cisgender. Any other terms that people want to go over real quick before we move on? It's a lot. But are there any other terms you want to look at real quick?
Kim, can I just mention that there's a spectrum of asexuality,
Yep.
and that I know it's a lot to delve into and we don't have a lot of time,
Yep.
but a lot of our students identify and use identifying terms that fall within the spectrum of asexuality.
Yep. And it's interesting because, you know, there's sort of ace, you talk about asexuality, and you also talk about aromanticism.
Mm-hmm.
And so you can have someone who's asexual, but they're romantic, someone who's romantic, or aromantic, but they're sexual. So there's all different combinations. Thank you for bringing that up. It is absolutely a spectrum. Anything else? All right, let's keep moving on down our road here. Let's look at transgender identities. And again, the symbol for transgender, the transgender communities often is considered to be this image, which really is an umbrella term. The transgender as a term is really considered an umbrella term. Again, there's a spectrum. There's a variety of folks that identify within the transgender sort of arena. And there's different terms that are used. And it's interesting, again, I think I've reviewed this with some folks in your community. Transsexual has been considered by some, and it's usually generation differences, to be offensive. I've chatted with folks from the different national transgender organizations that say transsexual is still a term that some members of the transgender or trans community still use to refer to themselves. Often it's someone who's had some sort of medical intervention in terms of sort of affirming their gender around their sexual biology. But these are different terms that are used that sort of fall within the transgender umbrella. And my understanding by talking with different transgender folks is that they talk about a journey of their gender understanding, that they understood their gender to be one way at certain times by what they were told, and then they learn about their gender and how their gender is, and it's a real journey. Part of that journey is how they identify and how they want to be identified in terms of pronouns. You know, it's not that confusing. Pretty much they, them, theirs is a third set of gender pronouns that many of my students use. Many of my students who identify as non-binary would want to have a gender pronoun they, them, theirs. The z's or zers I haven't heard actually ever at GW, but it's used at some times. So the big thing is gender pronouns are identified by the person for what they want you or me to use in terms of referencing them in the third person. Sometimes it feels like an extra step in my head when I remember, you know, I might have learned of someone or met someone who identified more as man as woman, and then they came out or identified themselves in a new way, and now they use they, them, and theirs. And sometimes I slip up. When I do, I apologize, and I just do my best to always use the gender pronouns that someone asks to be used. We use those name badges where you put your pronouns down. People put their pronouns in their email signature. You can put your pronouns in your Zoom signature, which is pretty cool. So any questions about pronouns? It's pretty basic.
Hi, Tim.
Hi.
I wonder if you could advise about when you're meeting someone new. Sorry, I lost my brain. Lost my brain, guys. Where'd it go? How intentional should you be about finding out pronouns? Which is not to say that you should just assume, but should one sort of go very sort of non-gendered, or should one, how should one proceed?
So, you know, it's tricky because, and maybe it's more the millennial mind frame or something like that. For me at GW, I've seen articles in our school newspaper where when professors ask for students to introduce themselves with their pronouns on their first day of class, to be inclusive, they got pushed back by someone writing to the newspaper saying, you know, you're outing me, this and that. So, you know, you sort of say, well, you're kind of damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. My sense is, first and foremost, intention is key. And certainly I can intend to be inclusive and still make a misstep. What I do if I do not know someone's pronouns and there might be a question about misgendering them is I introduce myself with my pronouns and I ask their name and, you know, what pronouns do you use? When it comes to classrooms, I think faculty and staff, we can put our pronouns in our emails, on our syllabi. We could ask the students if that's a comfortable thing that we want to do. Generally, I think it's there's no like perfect approach. And again, I think there's a mixture of like student development and millennial mentality where you want something perfect all the time for each individual. Like when you go to Starbucks, you get your own coffee that's like exactly the way you want it. And sometimes that's not how life is. And we don't ever want to misgender someone. I'm sorry if that's not a really super clear answer.
No, thanks for exploring that question. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions or thoughts about gender pronouns? Again, they might not seem like a big deal to those of us who don't have anyone refer to us with the incorrect pronouns, but it is a big deal. Next, gender inclusive bathrooms. A gender inclusive bathroom, again, anyone can use that bathroom. Anyone can use that bathroom. Often it's a single stall bathroom. In the District of Columbia, every single stall public access bathroom has to be labeled as gender inclusive for anyone to use. So it's no big deal. It's just a bathroom that anyone can use. DC did a promotional campaign, Safe Bathrooms DC, saying it's difficult to find a clean bathroom, one with toilet paper. Why are we making it more difficult for non-binary or transgender or anyone to find a bathroom? And so there's different signage that people use. Are any of these signs, do you have these signs at Montgomery College? Any of these particular signs?
Tim, we just updated our signage last year. We do have gender inclusive restrooms. I put out a list and I had the list on my Title IX website, and we have updated our restrooms with signage. I forget what exact signage we use, but we do have signage to designate gender inclusive.
Awesome. Thank you, Christopher. GW chose the bottom right image minus the toilet. For whatever reason, the university culture felt like it was unseemly to have a picture of a toilet. I'm like, you know, what's in that mysterious room? Well, a toilet. So anyway, there's different ways to identify them. Basically, our students rejected all the ones with images of people in dresses and pants. They felt like gender expression there was too restrictive. It's like women don't look like that, men don't always look like that. So lots of different ways to present it. Who benefits from them? All sorts of folks. So gender inclusive bathrooms help a lot of people. People with disabilities with an other gendered attendant, parents with other gendered students, people like me who want more privacy, and transgender, non-binary folks. We all benefit from gender inclusive bathroom. You know, I think we just need to relax a little bit because we use them all the time. You know, I go in that porta potty, you go in that porta potty afterward. You might be a different gender. I don't know if anyone has ever seen these, but now it's kind of crazy. I've seen blue porta potties and pink porta potties. Have people seen those? I'm like, what's the point? So like, if I have to go to the bathroom and the blue one's, you know, occupied, I can't use the pink one. But that's the idea. I don't know if it's because of the cleanliness thing. Usually safety of women is referenced around gender inclusive bathrooms. You know, studies and research have shown that that really is not an issue in terms of the transgender folks using gender inclusive bathrooms. So again, I think we need to relax a little bit. and sort of gently remind people that we often use gender inclusive bathrooms. And it's the idea of welcoming everyone to Montgomery College. Everyone deserves to be able to have a great education, and that maybe would start with being able to pee when you need to pee. You know, we all need to use the bathroom. It's kind of a nice common denominator.
Tim, can I just ask a question?
Please.
Going back to what you said GW had, which was the picture without the toilet.
Yeah.
What about those who are non-native English speakers? Because restroom is not a common name, a common vocabulary word.
Right. Exactly. That was exactly my point. I was saying, so on the one hand, GW wants to be an international campus, an internationally known campus, a world-class campus. How can we not have the image of the toilet or whatever? Because not everyone's speaking English, which is what we want. We want people speaking other languages. So you make a very good point, and it's a fault of ours. I want to have you look at these elements: student, staff, faculty experience as LGBTQIA folks and allies. What about gender inclusive bathrooms at Montgomery College? Do you have non-discrimination policies at Montgomery College that are enforced if need be? Are there workshops? I heard there were safe zones. Are there opportunities for academic research in what we call queer studies? Again, for me, that term is a little bit tricky, but that's what they're known. And what about generally LGBTQIA plus visibility? And again, wow, kudos to you, Dr. Pollard, Sharon. Folks are out and open, and which is remarkable. How about students? Or how about other folks? So if you want to take a quick screenshot of this and get back into your groups for about 10 minutes, and then come back and let's reflect a little bit about your knowledge, your cultural intelligence of LGBTQIA experiences and integration at Montgomery College. And then we'll look at that together. Does anyone want to share a couple points from your breakout around your sense of the LGBTQIA experience at Montgomery College?
I'll go for our group. Can you guys hear me? Yep. Okay, I have to make sure I'm not.
Yeah.
So in our group, we were talking about, because I'm on the Germantown campus, and so we were talking about how years ago that we didn't have gender inclusive bathrooms. We, male or female, and so recently we now have 2 bathrooms that are, I guess you can call them family bathrooms that anyone can use on the campus. And we talked about like clubs or some type of group for LGBTQIA plus students.
Awesome.
Students, because we know for sure that there is a group on the Rockville campus, but it was hard to find something on the Tacoma Park and Germantown campus. And so we were saying that there needs to be more visibility, and if there isn't a group, maybe it's a possibility of having a group started on those other 2 campuses for students on those campuses, besides having to go all the way to the Rockville campus.
So I just wanted to have a final reflection offered by our wonderful Sharon Bland, if she could jump back in and unmute and go for it.
So first of all, I just want to thank Tim so much. You all, please definitely go right now to your chat, complete your survey, and I just ask and encourage you all, as you think about and go through our summer, be thinking about the things that you've learned here. If you got questions, call me. I mean, I'm like probably the most accessible person ever. I can hand out my cell phone, probably like it's candy, but my cell phone, 301-706-0586. Call me, text me, what have you. Tim will be back with us in the fall for a session, so we'll have some more time with him then. And with that, thank you and great job.